Hi, my name is Hadassah Adorno, and I'm going to be talking about Erythroblastosis Fetalis and RhoGAM shots for my Anatomy and Physiology 2 class. Two questions I'm going to answer is one, why a second fetus is more likely to die from Erythroblastosis Fetalis when a mother has a B negative blood type and the baby has B positive blood type, both the first and second child. And two, how the RhoGAM shot specifically helps the second fetus survive, and what's the reasoning for the timing of the shots. To understand erythroblastosis fetalis, you kind of have to have like a background information and understand some things about blood and blood types. So to like break it down, red blood cells. What about them? So red blood cells, they have these specific markers on their surface called antigens. These in turn create immune responses to anything that wasn't in the body before. So you can kind of think of them as like the bouncer in the VIP section of the club. You can get into the club, but you can't get into that VIP section. So the non-compatible red blood cells, those are the people that aren't on the list. Like, no matter what you're saying, no matter what you're doing, you're not going to get in. And if you do, you're going to be in trouble. You're going to have consequences. So there are two blood groups, ABO and RH. ABO blood groups, they're based on two agglutinogens, type A and type B. Depending on whether you're AB, B, A, or O, you'll have antigens present on your red blood cells to act against red blood cells that don't belong. So they're doing the bouncer work. For instance, if you have type AB, you're going to have type A and B antigens. If you have B, you're going to have B antigens. If you have A, and if you have O, you're going to have neither A or B antigens. For antibodies, like if you have AB, you're not going to have any antibodies. If you have B, you're going to have anti-A antibodies. If you have A, you're going to have anti-B antibodies. And if you have O, you're going to have both anti-A and B antibodies. So RH blood groups are based on RH factors, agglutinogens. There are about 52 of them, though there's only a couple that are like really important. D is one of them. So when they give you a blood type like AB positive or AB negative, that's them listing ABO and RH groups together. So if you're AB positive, that means you have type AB in the ABO group and you're positive for RH in the RH group. If you have AB negative, that means you're negative for the RH group. If you're RH positive, that means that you have the D antigen, agglutinogen, and about 85% of Americans do. So unlike ABO blood groups, RH negative people, they're not going to have preformed antibodies for anti-RH antibodies. So when RH negative people are introduced to RH blood, the immune system is going to start to produce them slowly but surely. Though it doesn't happen after like the first transfusion or the first time that you're like introduced to the RH positive blood, because it takes time to make these antibodies. They're not going to automatically have these antibodies in place to prevent it from happening again. But once they are made, your red blood cells are going to attack. They will attack and destroy Rh positive red blood cells when exposed the second time. This time, the time after that, and so on. So they will. They just don't do it automatically. And they don't have preformed anti-Rh antibodies at all. So moving on from that, now that I gave you a little bit more of a background, I'm going to talk about what erythroblastosis fetalis is. So that's an issue with the blood that causes an Rh negative woman's anti-Rh antibodies to attack her Rh positive baby's red blood cells and destroy them or break them down. So we all know that red blood cells are responsible for carrying oxygen and carbon dioxide. So it's not a surprise that when erythroblastosis fetalis happens, the baby's going to become anemic and hypoxic. There's like varying levels of degrees that this happens, but it's deadly. So the baby doesn't have enough red blood cells, so not enough red blood cells since they're being destroyed by the mother's red blood cells. So the baby's not going to get enough oxygen. Now remember that once an Rh negative person is introduced to Rh positive blood, they're going to begin to make those antibodies. They're going to start cranking them out. So in this scenario, mom's blood type is B negative. That means she has that means she's not Rh positive. So, and both her first and second child are B positive. So while they have the same ABO group, they do not have the same Rh group. They have differing Rh groups. So the first baby's more likely to be born healthy with little to no complications, right? So remember that it takes time for your body to create these antibodies. So during that first pregnancy, when the placenta detaches from the uterus and bleeding happens, this is when the mom's immune system reacts and goes, oh, this is bad. This isn't supposed to be here. And bam, anti-Rh antibodies are going to be created. So this is why second fetuses are more likely to die from erythroblastosis fetalis. That's the reason why. So now that she has been introduced to these to Rh positive blood, she's gonna get she's gonna have anti-Rh antibodies starting to be created. So she's gotten pregnant a second time with an Rh positive child, so they're gonna attack the baby's blood cells. Less blood cells, less oxygen, greater chance of death. That is why it's more likely. You need oxygen to live and breathe, to create energy, to supply your body's organs. Like there's so many reasons why blood is important, like temperature, pH balance, and transportation, and so on and so forth. So when one thing's wrong with your blood, it goes to show that you're going to receive other complications too. So it's important that it's diagnosed and treated and prevented ahead of time, because like 1 in every 20 Rh negative women that are pregnant with an Rh positive fetus, they're gonna become immunized from it. They're gonna have a reaction to it. They're gonna create those antibodies, and they're gonna destroy that baby's blood cells. So chances are you've probably met someone that has had a child and has had this issue, and it was treated with RhoGAM shots. The chance is even greater when you receive like a transfusion with Rh positive blood. So like you have a 50% chance of this happening. Of becoming immunized. So now I'm going to talk about how erythroblastosis fetalis is treated and how does it help the second fetus survive and what's the reasoning for the time you get the shot. So once this is diagnosed, you're going to get RhoGAM shots. Rho-D, the agglutinogen that I mentioned before, immune globulin. This is going to be a medicine that stops a person from having that immune response happen. So that way they don't become sensitized to Rh positive blood and they don't start cranking out those antibodies. So the serum has anti-Rh antibodies. So by clumping together with the Rh factor, it stops the immune response. So this is important so that the mother's blood cells aren't attacking the fetus blood cells that they cause erythroblastosis fetalis. So since this isn't happening and there's no quarrel between the B negative mother and B positive fetus, the fetus has a better chance of survival. So the timing is super important. And I thought it was kind of cool the way they explained it. So like within like 3 days of getting exposed to Rh positive blood, you're going to want to get a RhoGAM shot. Or if you're at risk for getting exposed to Rh positive blood. Preventative measures are important. This means like during miscarriages, ectopic pregnancies, which means pregnancies that happen out of the uterus, vaginal bleeding during pregnancy, etc., you're going to get a RhoGAM shot. So primarily the mother's going to receive a RhoGAM shot in her third trimester, about 26 to 28 weeks out, 7 months to be precise, of her pregnancy. Why? So the mother's growing like a literal human in her body. It only goes to stand that like as the baby's growing, the placenta's growing. And the placenta is what the baby gets all the nutrients and the oxygen from. Red blood cells. So it's going to grow bigger. So the membrane separating the mom's blood from the baby's blood, it's going to get like thin. It's going to get stretched out. So like, for instance, when you put on gloves, obviously when you're stretching it, you can break a hole in the glove, right? So now whatever that was on your hand, like blood or feces or whatever, in case you're nursing, now it's going to get into your hand. So there's a possibility for risk for the blood mixing. Receiving the RhoGAM shot in her 7th month of pregnancy protects her for the rest of the pregnancy, because the shot, it lasts for like 13 weeks. So up until birth, it's going to protect her from what's going to stop her from making these anti-RH antibodies. So that way it doesn't affect the baby. Now, if the baby is Rh positive, she's going to need another RhoGAM shot within 3 days of giving birth. So the chance of both the mother and the child's blood mixing at the time of birth is higher, since bleeding occurs when the placenta is detached. So mixed blood, now she's been exposed to it. She's going to create those antibodies, right? That means if she's going to get pregnant again and she has another child that's Rh positive, she has those antibodies and they're going to attack that baby's red blood cells and it's going to destroy it. They'll become anemic and hypoxic and they could die. It's very important that it doesn't happen. You want your babies to live, right? So, once a person creates anti-Rh antibodies, the RhoGAM shot's not going to work. So that's why it's really important that it happens, one, when you're at risk, when you have a transfusion with Rh positive blood individuals, when you give birth 7 months out, because the chances for your blood mixing are getting higher and higher. It's important. Like, that's why the timing of the shot's important. You don't want future complications with your pregnancies. You don't want your baby to die. You want to make sure that everyone's settled, everything's okay, and that's it. So, yeah, I believe I answered those questions. Thankfully, because of modern medicine, erythroblastosis fetalis isn't as deadly as it used to be, but it's still something your healthcare providers are going to have to watch out for. So, that's about it. So thank you for listening. And thank you.